Hello everyone, welcome to Study Capital YouTube platform. My name is Atul Mishra. I am a mentor for CUT PZ MA English Entrance Examination. So in our previous videos, we have talked about modernism, how it's different from postmodernism, modernistic characteristic, modern literature characteristic, postmodern characteristics. In this video, we'll talk about four important theatrical forms of postmodern period, or in general 20th century literature. The first one is theater of opera, theater of absurd. Another one is theater of oppressed, theater of cruelty, and epic theater. Now you are probably aware about all these four theatrical forms of the 20th century. There was one question in last entrance examination. If you'll check 2020 JNU entrance examination, there were two questions, and then in 2021, 2022, 2023 respectively, there were around 2 to 3 questions in every entrance examination, either from the concept, from the theater, or the practitioners of the theaters, or from their text. Okay, so we'll try to understand the characteristics of these theaters, how they all merge together to break what we call the fourth wall, the imaginary wall between the audience and the actors, and how they represent the postmodern world around them. Okay, this is what we are going to discuss in this video. So we'll start with theater of absurd. In modernism we talked about two movements, surrealism and dadaism. These two movements generally talked about what we say, the illogic, irrationality and the nonsense that happened because of the First World War. So people were wounded, as we call 1920 as the lost generation. So the writers of the 1910 and 20s, which were grappling with this fragmentation, talked about it, and especially in art we see in surrealistic and dadaistic painting. Similarly, in the theater of absurd, because now we are talking about the postmodern world, we are talking about a period where this fragmentation, non-linearity, and the lack of meaning is not considered as tragic. Rather, people are enjoying the problem, what we say, problematization of problem, where we are not looking at the solution, rather we are enjoying the problem as such. So they are not tragic anymore, rather there are people who are celebrating it, and this is what we find in theater of absurd. It is inspired by Sartre's idea of existentialism. So there is Kierkegaard, there is Sartre, and many other people who are part of existentialism. What is existentialism? There are two movements. One inspired by Nietzsche's idea of nihilism, that there is no meaning, and then there is existentialism. Existentialism is a concept which talks about one very basic thing. You should remember this phrase: our existence precede our essence, right? So the old writers like Plato and Aristotle have mentioned in their writing that our essence comes first, then comes our existence. That means God has given a purpose to our life. So there is meaning that we are already aware about the essence for which our birth happens. But Sartre talks about in his writing that our essence comes later, first comes our existence. So we are the one who will give meaning to our life. He gave a very beautiful example of a soldier. There are two options that he has. One, where he can go to participate in a war, and thus contribute to a bigger cause, but his contribution is obviously going to be a little one. But he can also stay at his home and contribute in the well-being of his mother, in which his contribution will be large, but for a shorter cause. So it is his choice. He is the one who will give meaning to his life. This is existentialism. There is meaning, but you are the one who will give meaning to your life. Now this idea it inspires the theater of absurd. Now when we see theater of absurd in general, postmodern characteristics. So similarly we find the lack of plot in the writings of theater of absurd, there is illogic, so the enjoyment of what we say, irrationality, celebration of nonsense. So when it is depicted in literature, it is depicted in different manners. You find illogical, statements, you find dialogues which are illogical, there is non-linearity, as we have already discussed in the postmodern theater. There is, the setting is also surreal, and at the same time there is also dark humor. Now how it starts, like the way we talked about, you are probably aware about objective correlative, a concept which we read in Eliot, but Washington Nelson was the one who coined the term. We'll talk about the epic theater. Bertolt Brecht is one of the writers who made it famous, but Piscator was the one who coined it. In a similar way, we have theater of absurd. We know Samuel Beckett is a very important practitioner of the theater of absurd, but the term was coined by Martin Islin. What happens? You see a very good text called The Myth of Sisyphus by Albert Camus. What happened there? This character Sisyphus was given a punishment which he started enjoying. So the problem is, the situation is that we are reading, we are not, the character is not looking for solution, rather he started enjoying the problem. This is absurdity. You find there is no meaning, there is no logical connection that you can make, and that's why this is a typical characteristic of theater of absurd. So we see in the postmodern world, because people have lost touch with the reality, we talked about simulacra, simulation, hyperreality, intertextuality, and so many other characteristics of the postmodern literature. We know that the situation is absurd. People are not looking for solution. There is no one truth, the multiple truth. There is no logical connection that people can make, and that's why human situation is absurd. There is no purpose. It is devoid of purpose. So this is what we see in the writing of Samuel Beckett, Eugene Ionesco, Jean Genet, Arthur Adamov, and Harold Pinter, and there are many other writers of postmodern literature which talks about these things, right? So what we see, humankind is in this writing, in this view, is left feeling hopeless. It is bewildered, it is anxious, and what they do, they share a pessimistic vision of humanity, time frame where everyone is struggling vainly to find a purpose in their life, and that is how they'll control the fate, but they can't do so. So the term is coined by Martin Islin. We know it emerged in 1920s and 1930s, inspired by the Surrealism and Dadaism, but it was there probably after the Second World War in 1950s. There are very famous text, Beckett's text called Waiting for Godot. Why it is important text? It is written in 2 acts. Everything is same. If you just change 2 things. One is there are few leaves on the tree which was barren in the first act, and then the relationship between Lucky and Pozo is reverts. Other than that, nothing major change that took place. Now also you see 2 characters, Vladimir and Stragan, they are waiting for Godot, right? They go to the same place every day. Messenger comes, Godot never comes. Messenger comes and he says that Godot will not come today, but he'll come tomorrow for sure. And this is a pattern, recurring pattern that happens every day. So this is a repetition, again characteristic of theater of absurd. So you see, this is a play where nothing happens, no one comes, and it is awful. This is a line, a very famous line associated with this theater. Now another aspect of Waiting for Godot, you see what they are doing in order to pass the time. There is one scene where these 2 characters were thinking of committing suicide. So it shows the absurdity of human life. Again, when you read the play, you'll find it humorous. Why? Because they're also thinking about the branch, what will happen when Stragan will, for example, if Stragan is the first one who committed suicide. So and if the branch is broken, then how Vladimir will do the commit suicide. So they're discussing that you should do first, and it becomes in a way comic. So this is also one element of theater of absurd. So we have famous writings by Beckett, for example, Waiting for Godot, No Exit. You have Jean Genet, The Balcony. No Exit is by Sartre. No Exit by Jean-Paul Sartre. Waiting for Godot by Samuel Beckett. The Balcony by Jean Genet. Unesco's Rhinoceros. What happens in the text? Complete, people are turned into rhinoceros. There's no logical connection between the characters there in their dialogues. You see the bald soprano. There's one play called The Chair, Harold Pinter's Homecoming Birthday Party, and there are many other texts which are example of theater of absurd. I'll show you some literary example other than these famous one. Samuel Beckett, there's a play that he has written called Breathe. Breathe. What happens? Look at the story. I'll tell you the story, and it is very interesting, right? Because it is very short play. So what is the story then? It is a play about which ends in 35 seconds. Yes, we are talking about a play which actually ends in 35 seconds. What happens? There is a sound of a child who is crying, and then there is a recording of someone slowly inhaling and exhaling, like the way a adult person, and then you again see a identical cry, and that's how the text ends. So you see, there is no dialogue, there is a voice, a child crying, an adult person breathing, inhaling, and exhaling, and then again a cry. That's how the play ends. No people are seen on the stage, and he says, and Beckett mentioned about this writing, that it should be littered and with miscellaneous rubbish. So this play is nothing but rubbish. This is how he explains this text. So this shows the absurdity of the time frame. I'll also tell you another example, The Chairs by UNESCO. What happens in the play? Again, the story is very interesting. You see, there are old married couple. They are alone and they are waiting for guests to arrive. So there is a couple, the old man and the old woman, and they are expecting guests. Okay. Now the old man tells a favorite story from their past. An old woman, who seems to be both wife and mother, says he could have been much more in life than a caretaker. He says he has a great message for mankind, and he has engaged an orator to deliver it to their guests. So he's thinking of delivering a message which is related to life lesson to the people who are expected to come. But what happens when the guests arrive? They are invisible to the audience. So the people who are looking, there is no one, but the old couple thinks that there is someone, and they'll also address to those people, right? Again, the absurdity. So it says, couple will bring chairs, they'll engage them in conversation. There is no one on the stage, but they believe that there are few people and they're engaging with them. Now they include the old man, former lover, and a photographer with whom the old woman will also flirt. The old couple tell them contradictory stories about their past lives. So when you read the play, you'll find there is no logical connection between the dialogues that these people are speaking. So one says something, another says something which is totally different, right? There is no logical connection that you'll be able to make. Then you see, the room appears to be packed, and the couples act as users. And then you find they frantically arrange chairs for more and more invisible guests. They are very excited. When the emperor arrives, the emperor is also invisible. Now the old man talks with increasing grandiosity about his life and the message that he hopes will save mankind. So you see, there is no logical connection. There is no one on the stage, but these people are reacting in a way that there are people, and then there is no logical connection. There is another play. You need to find out the name of the play. I am telling you a story. There is one couple. They arrive to a place, they both are couple. They share the same house, and it is mentioned that they also share the same room, the same bed, right? They are coming from a same place together, the family of Smiths. Now you need to find out the name of the play and comment it on the group in this chat. So what is happening? They are coming from a same place. They are talking, and in their discussion you will find they are unable to recognize each other. So the couple, husband and wife, First, the way they are talking, there is no logical connection, and then they are unable to recognize each other. This shows the absurdity of the time frame. There are many other plays. I can show you some names of the text written by Samuel Beckett, because he is the one who popularized this form. So we have so many plays written by theater of absurd, which are example of theater of absurd writings. Okay, you see. Crab's Last Tape. There is a play called Play, and then Not I. There is a play called What Where. Then the trilogy related to the novel. They all are very good examples of theater of absurd. Okay, now I'll come back to the this form of writing for your examination purposes, because they have asked about the practitioners of the theater of absurd, so you should know the names of these people, the playwrights who are associated with it, and at the same time their important text. This is something that is important for your examination. We'll move ahead with another theatrical form, but I'll give you some names you should know, because we are talking about the postmodern word. There is Beat Generation, Howl by Allen Ginsberg, Naked Lunch by William S. Burroughs, and On the Road by Jack Kerouac is important writing of 1950s related to Beat Generation. I remember we talked about the postmodern characteristics. I'm just giving you few examples, few terms that you can associate with the postmodern literature. We talked about it a lot, so I'll not explain it. Whenever you think of metafiction, unreliable narrator, self-reflexivity, intertextuality, you should think about postmodernism, right? So intertextuality we have already discussed. There are so many postmodern theorists as well. We'll talk about John Barth and his very famous essay called The Literature of Exhaustion, which is also considered as a manifesto of postmodernism in our upcoming classes. Now moving ahead, because we need to talk about different forms of theater, we'll see certain movements. There is movement poetry of 1950s, the anthologies that are associated with it, confessional poetry of 1950s, characteristics of it, and then we reach to theater of which is known as epic theater. So Piscator was the one who coined the term epic theater, but Bertolt Brecht, who wrote Mother Courage, a very important text, which is a part of the epic theater. So what again, what is epic theater then? You break the fourth wall, the imaginary wall between the characters who are performing and then the people who are watching, the spectators, right? So you're doing it deliberately to disrupt, because to show the irrationality of the word. How will you do that? So the characters, you have one person performing two characters. You have play cards where you are deliberately being told the story. You'll be explain the story in in advance. So this is one such way to represent the theatrical form. What is this? There are certain practitioners, as I mentioned, and what is the purpose of epic theater? It is not to encourage an audience to suspend their disbelief. You remember, willing suspension of disbelief. Coleridge talks about it in his very famous 1817 text called Biographia Literaria, where he mentions how we willingly suspend our own disbelief in order to enjoy the narrative. He gave you have Christabel, a very important poem by Coleridge, where you can find this element. There are many other, but this is one that I have explained in my previous videos, right? So the purpose of epic theater is not conventional, it's innovative. So it is not to encourage an audience to suspend their disbelief. What it will do, it will rather force you to see the world as it is. So there is problem, the world is suffering, and you need to you need to look at those sufferings, you need to explain, you need to feel that suffering. So you'll not suspend your disbelief. This world is not imaginative where you can enjoy the pleasures, you can escape like the romantics, but you need to feel it, you need to suffer it like the world as it is. And that's why you have epic theater for you. Now there's another word that is associated with it. You have what we say V effect, Verfremdungs effect, estrangement effect, alienation effect. They all are same. Now, if you are aware about formalism, Victor Slawski coined the term called defamiliarization. This is a quote. This is a term that they have already asked in previous entrance examination. Defamiliarization, as the term suggests, you defamiliarize the thing that you are aware about, like your day-to-day thing. You defamiliarize it and present it in such a way that it looks unique. There are two terms, verisimilitude and defamiliarization. What is verisimilitude? Comment it in the chat box. Okay, so defamiliarization such as that you are defamiliarizing the day-to-day lifestyle. So you will represent the day-to-day things, but you will represent it in such a way that it looks unique to you. This is very similar to what we find in epic theater as alienation effect. Bertolt Brecht talked about it. What is the epic theater? Include, the use of poor or ironic actors. So you see, deliberately you are breaking the fourth wall. You are saying that you are not a spectator, but rather you are a actors. Try to decode this. You are a spectator, but at the same time you are also actor. You are breaking the fourth wall between the audience and the actors. So what you'll do, there is a deliberately use of poor acting, ironic acting. There is a set which is moving. There are actors who are playing multiple characters. There are actors interacting with the audience, and then there is direct address to the social issues as well. So you should remember that the term was coined by Piscator, but it was Bertolt Brecht who wrote The Mother Courage, The Threepenny Opera, and there are many other texts which is written. Very important person in epic theater. Okay, now I'll move ahead. Similarly, now there are two more theatrical forms, theater of oppressed and theater of cruelty. One more thing that you should remember, epic theater started in Germany. So this is German theatrical movement, right? Like the way you have theater of absurd, which was there in England. German theatrical movement, epic theater is German theatrical movement. Moving ahead, we have theater of oppressed. This is a practice of Brazilian theater. Remember, they all are very similar. The characteristics that we have seen in epic theater, in theater of absurd, you see the same element in theater of oppressed as well. Who was the practitioner then? In Brazil, you have Augusto Boal. You need to remember the name of this person. So Augusto Boal was the person who elaborated, who started this theater of oppressed in 1970s in Brazil. What he is trying to do? He is saying that spectators are actors. They also participate. They are not passive. They are active. They explore, they show, they analyze, and then they transform the reality in which they are living. This is theater of oppressed by Augusto Boal. There is one more theatrical form which is known as theater of cruelty. There is one person who is related to surrealism, and Antonin Artaud, and he is the person who came up with this form of theater known as theater of cruelty. What it is? Again, very similar. He is a member of surrealistic movement, Manifesto of Surrealism, a very important text by André Breton. So there is a movement that happened in 1910, and then this person, Antonin Artaud, who's a part of it, came up with a new form of theater known as theater of cruelty. What happens here? He came up with a text called the theater and its double. Now this is again very similar to what we have seen. You are breaking away with the traditional Western culture by, and the means by which artists assault the senses of the audience. Very similar to what we have seen. You just need to remember the name of the person who is associated with this form of theater. Theater of cruelty by Antonin Artaud. Now there are many people who are the practitioners. We talked about Jean Genet in theater of absurd. He is also one of the person who is a part of theater of cruelty. Grotowski, Peter Brook, although you don't read them, but they're also very important people in the theater of cruelty. Okay, so there are many other examples which we can discuss, because this form of theater, the postmodern word, there are many other theatrical forms that you can think of, but till now they have only asked questions from these four important theatrical movements. Okay, so I'll stop here. In our next video, we'll talk about post-colonial literature, post-colonial period, Indian theaters. For example, third theater, the theater, and other such theatrical performance happened in India. And this is just an introduction. You can again read little bit extra about all these theatrical forms. We are also running a batch where we are dealing with all those things in detail. If you want to have those access to these things, there is also a coupon code available. You can use Atul Sir 30 and you'll get 30% off as a special offer. I hope you liked the video. Please stay with us in this series, and we'll continue exploring other literature. Thank you so much.